Have you ever felt like your brain is a leaky bucket? You pour in all this great information from books, lectures, whatever, but then it just seems to drain right out in a couple of days? Well, today we're going to patch that bucket for good. We're going to dive into the science of why we forget, and I'm going to show you a super simple, really powerful technique to finally make learning stick. Okay, let's get into it. So let's start with a question that I'm pretty sure hits home for all of us. Why do we forget pretty much everything we learn? You read a whole book, you sit through a long meeting, you study for hours, and then a week later, poof, it's almost like it never even happened. It is so frustrating, right? But it turns out there's a really good reason this happened. And here's the thing. The problem isn't you. It's not your felt. The problem is that our brains are actually wired to forget. Seriously, it's a feature, not a bug. Forgetting is this totally natural, predictable process that helps our minds filter out all the unimportant junk. But if we want to master something new, we need a way to signal to our brain what's actually worth keeping. I mean, we've all been there, right? Cramming for a test, you pull that all-nighter, you somehow ace the exam, and you feel like a genius. And then a week later, it's just gone. Total blank. It's like the information was written in disappearing ink. This isn't just a feeling, it's a scientific reality. Okay, check this out. This is the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, and honestly, it's kind of terrifying. It shows that our memory for new information doesn't just fade away gently. It absolutely plummets. You can lose up to 80% of what you learned in just a matter of days if you don't do something to actively remember it. This is exactly why cramming feels like a win in the moment, but is a total failure for any kind of long-term learning. So how in the world do we fight this crazy curve? Well, this is where things get really interesting. It turns out that our most common, our most comfortable study habits, the ones that feel the most productive, are usually the least effective. They create what scientists call an illusion of mastery. Just look at the difference here. On the left, you've got what most of us do, right? Passive studying, rereading your notes, highlighting half the book. It's all about just putting information in. And yeah, it feels easy, it feels productive. But the real magic, the real learning is over on the right, active retrieval. This is all about pulling information out of your memory. It feels hard, it feels like a struggle, but that effort, that's what forges strong, lasting memories. And there's actually a scientific term for that fake confidence you get from rereading. Illusory competence. It's the huge difference between recognizing something and truly knowing it. You glance at your notes and you think, oh yeah, yep, I got this. But that's just familiarity talking. The second those notes are gone, so is the information. You can't actually pull it out of your head on your own. But here is the really good news. There is a way to beat that forgetting curve and to totally escape that illusion of mastery. It's an incredibly powerful science-backed technique that honestly acts like a superpower for your brain, and it's called retrieval practice. So what is it? Retrieval practice is simply the act of pulling information out of your head. That's it. Every single time you force your brain to recall a fact or a concept or a process, you're not just testing your memory, you are actively strengthening it. That very act of pulling it out is what tells your brain, hey, this is important. You need to keep this around. The crucial point really is this. We have to completely flip our understanding of what learning even is. It's not about how many times you can passively look at information. Nope. True learning is an active process of retrieval. It is all about getting information out, not just cramming more of it in. And this brings us to this really cool core principle called desirable difficulty. It's the idea that the mental struggle to remember something is exactly what makes the memory stick. We're so conditioned to find the easiest way to do things, but when it comes to learning, a little bit of difficulty isn't just good, it's absolutely essential. So remember, if it feels hard, that means it's working. Okay, so we get the theory, but how do we actually put this into practice? Let's look at some super simple, really powerful strategies you can start using today, like right now. Whether you're studying for a big exam, learning a new skill for your job, or shoot, even just trying to remember people's names. All right, so low-stakes quizzing is one of the absolute best forms of retrieval practice. This isn't about grades, it's about building memory muscle. And this 5-step process is a great way to do it. First, just be clear about what you're quizzing yourself on. Then, ask a bunch of different kinds of questions. Don't just stick to multiple choice. Give yourself enough time to really dig deep into your memory. Don't just rush to the answer. Then, check your work right away for that instant feedback. And maybe most important, embrace your mistakes. They're not failures, they are little signposts telling you exactly where you need to focus. And hey, retrieval practice doesn't have to be some big, formal thing. You can use these simple tricks anywhere, anytime. A brain dump is awesome. Just grab a blank sheet of paper, set a timer for 3 minutes, and write down absolutely everything you can remember about a topic. 2 things is a super quick check-in. After you read a chapter or leave a meeting, just pause and recall 2 key ideas. Or try retrieval before review. Try to remember what you learned last time before you look at your notes. And of course, good old flashcards, a classic for a reason as long as you use them for active recall. Okay, now, to make your retrieval practice even more powerful, you combine it with something called spacing. So instead of cramming all your practice into one giant marathon session, you just spread it out. A little bit today, a little more in a couple of days, then maybe again next week. This forces your brain to work just a little bit harder to recall the information each time, which, as we now know, is exactly what builds those super strong, long-lasting memories. Ready for a real pro-level tip? Try interleaving. Instead of practicing one single thing over and over and over, you mix it up. So if you're learning math, don't just do 20 addition problems in a row. No, mix in some subtraction, some multiplication. If you're practicing guitar, don't just practice scales for an hour. Mix in some chords, a piece of a song. It feels harder, for sure, but it teaches your brain to be way more flexible and to choose the right tool for the job. So the whole point of all this, the big takeaway, is that this is about working smarter, not just harder. That little bit of extra effort you put in up front with retrieval practice, it pays off big time in the long run. Not just in what you remember, but in how your brain actually works. And I mean, the results just speak for themselves. The data is so clear. Active retrieval absolutely blows passive resetting out of the water. And we're not talking about some tiny improvement here. We're talking about more than doubling your long-term memory of the material. It is the difference between temporarily recognizing something and truly owning that knowledge for good. And here it is, the ultimate benefit. When you use retrieval practice to really master that foundational knowledge, that knowledge becomes automatic. You don't have to struggle to remember the basics anymore. And this frees up all this precious mental bandwidth, your working memory. So you can focus on the more complex, creative stuff, like analysis, critical thinking, and real problem solving. So I'll leave you with this final thought. It is time to stop just passively rereading and start actively retrieving. Think about what you're trying to learn right now. What is one thing, just one, that you can commit to pulling out of your memory instead of just putting it back in, starting today?